Shalom.
Assalamu alaikum.
This is Peace Talk
A podcast about the Middle East.
and Israel. I'm Jonathan Sacerdoti, a Jewish journalist based here in London.
And I am Moataz Khalil, Mizo, Egyptian journalist, live here in London.
In a moment, we've got a very special guest.
Mr. Mohammad Darawshe, he Arabic expert, which he call the Jewish and the Arab to live together in Israel.
But before that, let's just catch up on what's happened in the last few days. This week and in the last couple of days, we've seen a real push from Israel into the south of Gaza. They seem to have really intensified the fighting, especially around Khan Yunis. The other thing that I found very interesting noting this week is that the world seems to have woken up to what they're calling gender-based violence on the 7th of October. That is, in less diplomatic words, rape and sexual assault and abuse of women and apparently men, according to some reports, during the 7th of October attacks.
Exactly.
And what's been really interesting, I think, is that firstly, it's taken so long for that to become an international talking point, that people were willing to discuss it. But more importantly, it's been that there's been a sort of level of denial among some people. And one very specific case here in the UK that's been taking people's attention is that of Owen Jones, the Guardian columnist and YouTuber. He went and saw the films that the Israelis have put together, made up from GoPros and dash cams, of the actual assaults, the Palestinian terrorists and the brutality they carried out on October the 7th. Now, I also went and saw those films a few weeks before, and it is horrific and quite difficult to watch. The thing that's opened Owen up for so much criticism is that he said that in describing it, he said, you see the atrocities, but you don't see any evidence of rape.
Yes.
And he's been very, very, very widely criticised for that, especially by some female columnists and thinkers, but pretty much across the board, I would say. He's been a passionate and, I would say, quite extreme supporter of the Palestinian cause during the discussions of the war. He's been very, very loud and very, very omnipresent on the media here in the UK. Now, Owen Jones says there wasn't evidence of rape or sexual assault in those films. I would beg to differ. I saw some pretty horrific things there. I didn't see someone being raped, and many people have questioned whether or not that's what he actually wanted, was to see videos of people being raped. But I remember that you and I were talking, and you've written that piece that you published just recently about rape and the treatment of women in war. And I wanted to ask you a bit more about that in this context, specifically about Owen Jones.
Firstly, I wanted to tell Owen Jones or anyone which support his point of view, what is the principle which in the mind of Hamas fighter when he go to cities of Gaza? See Owen or see anyone which supports the Owen point of view. This is the Quran. My name is Moataz Khalil. I am Muslim. I am reading the Quran every day, by way. And I wanted to tell you these parts. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم by Arabic, okay? بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فاقتلوا المشركون حيث وجدتموهم التوبة. What does that mean? You should, to the Muslim fighter, you should kill everyone who should not believe in Islam in anywhere in the war background, okay? You should kill, not hesitate. Go directly to kill him.
You should kill anyone who doesn't believe in Islam.
Exactly, in the war. This is at-tawbah.
Okay.
Another point. Can I say it by Arabic? Or
Give us the Arabic and then the English.
وقاتلوهم حتى لا تكون فتنة ويكون الدين كله لله. سورة الأنفال. You should kill them. You should kill them and cause a problem to them to win in the war. Okay? This is a Quran, Owen. This is a Quran which anyone support Owen. Okay? This is what the principle in Hamas statements. Go to the internet and see. By the way, I wanted to tell a small story. In the first day, in 7 October and 8 October, I sent it to Joe as a friend, some Facebook posts, which some Arab here, Palestinian here, wrote it. They are so proud. And they, one of them talk about Sherry Bibas. This Palestinian woman which live here.
I remember you sent me this post
Yes.
from a Palestinian woman who lives here.
And what she said, Habibti, come to us in Gaza and enter with your right leg. This mean in the Arabic, we should sleep with you. One of these soldiers, one of the Hamas fighters, will sleep with rabid you.
So
It's our culture.
the comment was about Shiri Bibas, the woman who was kidnapped
Yes.
with her 2 children. The 2 ginger-haired children become world famous.
Exactly.
And you're saying that this, I remember you sent me the post and I didn't understand it because I don't speak Arabic and know the culture. So what you're saying is that post in which she said in Arabic, something that translated to enter into your new home with your right foot.
Yes,
And
exactly.
can you explain to me what the importance of that is, how it means that?
In Islam, when the Islamic army attack Khaybar the Jewish of Khaybar.
The Battle of Khaybar, which we hear often in those chants, Khaybar, Khaybar.
Khaybar ya Yahud, Jaish Muhammad will return.
We've heard those on the streets of London.
This is the most sensitive war between the Islamic soldiers, the Islamic army, and the Jewish, because the Jewish in Khaybar has a most power in the Middle East, in all this area which live Muhammad and the Muslim, in Mecca and in Al Medina, and also in all over this area. So when I wanted to win, I should get rid of them, and also I should depress them and make them always afraid. What he do, Muhammad? He takes the most beautiful woman, Safiya. We call her in Islam Safiya al-Yahudiyya.
Safiya the Jewess.
The Jewish Safiya. He married her, but he raped her.
He raped her.
Yes. Why he choose Safiya? There is a many Jewish women. Why the soldiers and the army chief, the army Islamic chief, and Muhammad choose Safiya? Safiya come from a famous family, a great Jewish family, and her husband Muhammad and his soldier kill him. Okay, and she write some songs. She so beautiful woman. So it's a symbol. When I rape her, the Jewish in all the time will remember this. As a result of that, in any disagreement between any Arab Muslim, by the way, in Arab Christian also, if he ridiculous, and the Jewish, he said Khaybar ya Yahud. It's like Nazi, Auschwitz, Jewish.
The Nazis.
Yes, exactly. It's the same.
And I want to...
It's not only the war, Jonathan. You know, some of Islamic principle say what? If I kill you, I make you happy. You should suffer. You should suffer from this rape. So what is the shameful thing to the woman in an Arabic culture? To rape her. Owen didn't catch or didn't understand what is the Arabic culture said. I think he didn't catch, or I think also he didn't read the Quran. I think Owen didn't know about our culture, didn't know about Islam culture, didn't know about how mean it's Khaybar. I think I respect him. He is good, but he didn't catch. He did, and by the way, how he can see that in YouTube? Habibi, he didn't really he didn't understand. He didn't understand what the Islamic army want. And by the way, this is Sinwar said before 7th October. And by the way, this is what Musa Abu Marzouk said. Hamas leaders. Hamas said, go, Owen. It's this message from me, Habibi, from journalist, Egyptian journalist, Muslim, to you. Owen, enter to Hamas website and read. Only read. and I respect you. By the way, I like your videos, but one point, enter to this, read the Quran only. And you will understand. If you wanted to catch viewers, if you wanted to get more audience, okay. But you should get him when you read, okay? When you have a culture about what the Islam say in these sensitive points. We should rape the Christian or the Jewish women.
I think for many people that's really shocking to hear, especially in the West. It's clear that not all Muslims feel that way. You don't feel that way.
Exactly.
I have Muslim friends other than you who definitely don't feel that way. My question is that a controversial reading of the story in the Quran? Is it controversial and extreme to believe that rape is a fundamental part of Islamic warfare? Is that mainstream thought? Do we know that that's Hamas or Muslim Brotherhood thought? Is it a leap for us to be saying that because of these verses that you've read us from the Quran, that is the explanation in part for what happened on the 7th of October in the Israeli communities around the south?
In Tawbah part in Quran, they answer you. Listen, okay, by Arabic, and we will translate it. وَقَاتِلُوا الَّذِينَ لَا يُؤْمِنُونَ بِاللَّهِ وَلَا الْيَوْمَ الْآخَرِ. You should kill everyone which not believe in Islam and which not believe in Muhammad, okay, and in Paradise Day. So, what does that mean? When I rape woman, which not believe on Islam, okay, which not believe on Islam, the God will be happy. When I was in Egypt, in Al-Azhar, for example, I go to Al-Azhar and I love Al-Sayyida Nafisa Mosque.
This is the mosque.
Mosque is Sayyida Nafisa and also Al-Azhar. Every Friday, you can hear someone, Allahumma la'an al-Yahud. God will destroy all the Yahud.
These horrific testimonies we've heard more and more this week about eyewitnesses having seen gang rapes. For example, in the Nova party, there was, in the Sunday Times, the account given by an eyewitness. He was hiding and he saw a woman being gang raped. He saw a woman who was crying out to the rapists, please just kill me. What you're doing to me is going to kill me anyway. And they laughed.
They laughed because they believe.
Another account now of a woman being interviewed by the Israeli police, I think. She was another eyewitness. She said she saw a woman being raped. She said she was definitely alive at the time. She had blood pouring down her back. And then her attackers cut off her breasts and threw them around in the road. There are people who don't want to believe this. There are people who are traumatized from seeing it, just from hearing it. Obviously, the idea that Owen Jones should see a video of it is, I think, repellent to so many people. I don't need to see a video of that. But I'm asking again, just because it's so shocking, I think, to many people. You're saying that this was part of these Hamas terrorists' ideology.
Yes, principles. In the mosque in Gaza, they learn that. And even in my Palestinian friends here, they always talk about Jewish women. And they always talk about we can rape them.
Just a few years ago, there's that very famous case. There was a convoy that came down, I think, from Bradford to London, drove through a fairly Jewish population in London, shouting with megaphones from the cars, which were covered in Palestinian flags, F the Jews, rape their mothers, rape their daughters. And there were arrests made. And then in the end, nothing happened with those people they arrested. Those threats of rape, let's be specific, that's what happened on the 7th of October in Israel. Are you saying that the same extremism that exists in Gaza among Hamas terrorists could also exist elsewhere in the world among extremists? Could that be a real threat here in the UK?
It's one of Arabic principle. It's one of your Arabic and the Islamic mind. It's not, in their point of view, it's not a terror. No. It's a culture. To be the God will happy with you.
Well, that's extremely alarming, I think, for many people and really difficult to hear. Let's move on because we've got a very interesting guest today.
Exactly, it's Mr. Mohammad Darawshe. It's one of the Arabic expert, and he called to the Jewish and the Arab in Israel to live together. And also he lost his cousin Awad Darawshe in 7 October massacre.
That's right. His cousin was actually a medic, a paramedic
Yes.
in the music festival,
Exactly.
the Nova Festival,
Exactly.
and he stayed specifically to try and treat people who were being attacked and injured.
A young man.
He believed, right, that he would be able to survive because he was an Arab.
By the way, he tell Hamas before they killing him, I am Arab, I am Muslim, please don't kill me. One of Hamas fighter tell him, no, you are Israeli, and shoot him.
It's terrible.
Yes.
And
yes,
aside
it's a
from
fact.
aside from that direct connection, he is also a leading expert on coexistence and a politician within Israel who has worked with the United Arab List.
Exactly, with Mr. Ayman Ouda. This is the big challenge, how to live together as Jewish and Arab in Israel. Mohammed, welcome in our podcast, Joe and Mizu. And first, I am so sorry to what happened to Awad, which lost his life in the 7th of October.
Indeed. It's almost 2 months and 2 days. It's still not, we're still not getting closure for that because the war continues and it's part of that bigger story. So the pain continues. But Awad brought us a lot of pain, but also a lot of pride in his heroic action of trying to save people to the last breath that he had. His body was found with when he was still carrying bandages in his hands. Bandages he was hoping to close the wounds of some of the wounded people on the scene. That's his legacy.
We're particularly privileged to speak with you today because of your, not just because you have this direct connection, but because of your background. You've spent your whole life and your career effectively pursuing peace and coexistence. So maybe you could just, for viewers and listeners, give us a little summary, 2-3 sentences of who you are before the 7th of October and who you are after it.
Well, who I am before is a long story. I live in a village called Iksal, which is just outside Nazareth. My family has lived there for approximately 800 years. I'm 27th generation. My granddaughter is 29th generation. She's 5 months old. And for us, this is home. For us, this is homeland. I always like to assert we did not immigrate to Israel. Israel immigrated to us. We did not choose Israel. Israel chose us. And we have a debate with Israel about whose state is it. The Jews say it's the state of the Jewish people, and we argue it should be also our state. A state that says it's a state of 80% of its population and maybe a similar number of diaspora Jews, leaving outside the legitimacy 20% of its indigenous population. This is not a normal state. And I don't think Israel should be allowed to disown 21% of its population. And the disownment is not just by concept, it's also by policies of discrimination and marginalization. So I've dedicated my life to 2 things. One is legitimize our status here as legitimate citizens here to stay, to try to avoid the option of becoming refugees in one of the neighboring Arab countries, as 70% of the Palestinian people have gone through. So it's a battle of survival that I'm trying to lead in, and that battle of survival has two approaches. One is how can we settle positive relations between us and the Jewish citizens of the state, so that it's not relationship of animosity but a relationship of civic partnership. And the second is how to empower our own community socially, economically, and politically, so that we are fit for this joint partnership, and we're not just we don't only stay in the place of cleaning garbage and collecting garbage, but do what we know how to do best. Even today, we are now 40% of the medical staff in Israel, although we're 20% of the population. So to seek equal integration of quality and not just integration on the lower echelons of society.
I wonder, can you tell me more fundamentally then, to fight for your survival, you said, the survival of your people. Do you feel Israeli?
Well, the question is, what's Israeli? Most Israeli Jews, when they hear the term Israeli, for them it's synonymous to Jewish. So I'm not Jewish. And I have lots of components of Jewish culture in our life. We use Hebrew in our language. We choose the topics to study at university, which are very Israeli, because we want to fit the Israeli job market. And much of our humor has become Israeli. Our economic behavior is Israeli. Our political aspirations are Israeli. We vote to the Knesset. Our Israeli, our chutzpah or audacity in how we express ourselves has become Israeli. So I would say we are in the Israelization process. We're not there because Israeli is, has a different meaning towards an Arab citizen versus what it means towards a Jewish citizen. Israeli is not yet an inclusive value that everyone subscribes to it with the same understanding. So there is an Israelization process that we are going through as Arab citizens, the Jewish citizens are going through. It's not the same speed, and probably till now it's not the same target.
So after 7 October, Mr. Mohammed, we should tell the world that there is a difference between two terms, Arab and radical Islam. After 7 October, there is a difference between two terms.
I mean, clearly there's a difference. I've said it from on October 7th. I said that's not my Islam, that's not my Arab identity, and that's not my cultural identity that can justify actions such as the actions that were done by some of the Hamas activists on October 7th. For me, I'm an Arab, I'm a Palestinian, and I'm Muslim, and I'm proud of these three identities. And I don't want to lose any of those three identities. And I don't think I need to be ashamed with any of those identities. I think those identities, the mainstream of those identities to which I connect are things to be very proud of, full of values, human values, cultural values that have brought to the world a lot of light. That's my Arabism, that's my Islamism, that's my Palestinianism. And I assert that no one can confiscate that. Not radical groups that have emerged now or groups that have emerged 1,000 years ago. They've all failed. They emerge and they collapse because the mainstream wins at the end of the day, and the mainstream of Arab and Islamic and Palestinian identity is that we're normal human beings that want normalcy. We're normal human beings that want to live in peace and coexistence with others. So I don't think my identity collapsed. I think that some groups are trying to take over, and we're going to prevent them from taking it over.
Okay, Mohammed, but it's the same words, your words, the same words which Mansour Abbas, for example, tell the world, but you disagree with him. You know that in conclusion, Mansour Abbas is from Muslim Brotherhood, الحركة الإسلامية. So
first of all, I respect Mansour a great deal, but I do differ from him significantly, because I think what I've gone through in my life is also modernization that affects the way I relate to my daughters and to my wife about the status of women in Arab culture and in Muslim culture. All of my three daughters are very accomplished university students without head cover, which probably will not be seen as something good in the eyes of people from the Islamic movement. So my elder daughter is doing her PhD in genetics at the Technion, and I'm not going to force her to put a head cover just because that's what my components of my identity tell me to do. I gave her the freedom, and I pushed her to have the freedom to decide for herself, and she chooses to look. She's modest, but not according to the standards of the Islamic movement. But she's also a self-accomplished person that is working on DNA damage repair, hoping to find cures for cancer and aging. And that's the kind of girls I'm raising, and I don't want components of identity to pull them backwards because of a movement. I'm not part of the movement, and I think that the difference between me and Mansour is that we are more free souls that do not relate to movements. I'm a Muslim, and I'm proud Muslim, and I go every Friday and more than that to pray in the mosque. But at the same time, I dare to go outwards towards modernization.
You said that the mainstream, the moderate, always wins out, but it doesn't look like that at the moment. And I think that from my perspective, what I want to ask you is if you see it as I do, which is I think that what happened on October the 7th, what Hamas did in this long history of an ongoing conflict, set back the cause of Palestinian nationhood, of coexistence, and of moderation within Islam even, and within Arab culture, decades, if not centuries. I mean, how on earth do you keep faith that moderation can win out in both the Palestinian cause and more broadly in terms of Islam and Arab identity?
I'm an optimist, and I'm also a father, and now a grandfather. And I think if you bring children to life and you're not an optimist, you do not deserve to be a father, and you do not deserve to be a grandfather. If we leave it to extreme national Zionism, and if we leave it to extreme Palestinian religious Islamism, then we're set for continued clash. I don't see any difference in ideology, maybe difference in practice. What Ben-Gvir wants is complete expulsion of Arab citizens in nice and not so nice ways. And we've seen some of his actions in Hawara just a few months ago. Not himself personally, but he gave the support, the ideological support. So if we leave it to those people, ideologically, they want what they call cultural clash in order to bring for supremacy of one nation over the other. That's what the story is about, whether it's an Islamic Brotherhood or a national religious Zionism. What happened on October 7th is not just Hamas attacked. What happened on October 7th was the collapse of the theory that you can bypass the Palestinian issue, that you can go to regional peace by avoiding dealing with the Palestinian issue and meanwhile sustaining occupation. What collapsed is what Netanyahu speaks about, economic peace, that all people want is a good job and a nice apartment. People deserve dignity also at the same time. And what also collapsed is that extreme radicals can be accommodated, whether it's extreme radicals such as Hamas that were fed by Israel and Qatar with tens of millions of dollars in order to create this disconnect or disability of the Palestinians to have unified leadership so that Israel can claim there's no one to talk to, and they keep feeding the Palestinian separation. And also by the fact that today we have an extreme radical components in the Israeli government that are going to try to lead us to the flip side of what Hamas did in the West Bank.
So let us agree that not all the Palestinian Hamas and not all the Israeli Itamar Ben-Gvir, okay? But
absolutely.
Absolutely, okay. But I wanted to ask you about you as a man, as a father, as a grandfather. Talking about what happened to the women. How do you see what happened to the Jewish men on the 7th of October? What's your message? I ask here Mohammad Darawshe, a father and a grandfather, a Muslim. Not I ask about Mohammad Darawshe, a political.
Intrusion on women is whether it is harassment or rape or killing with such ugly ways as it happened on October 7th. I think it's savage shame that and the fact that some people borrowed elements of my identity to justify that is a personal shame. And it's scary. It's scary to think that a young woman can be exposed to those kind of actions, savage, ugly, brutal actions, and you know, you move on to the next day. We shouldn't move on to the next day on those kind of things. There's certain actions and certain crimes against humanity, and this is a crime against humanity. It's not just crime against the Jews. I take it also as crime against me. As a father to three daughters, any woman that gets attacked, it's for me, it's like an attack against my daughters. I feel that those women that were attacked, these are my sisters, these are my daughters, those are women that my heart goes to them and to their families. And you know, and the never again that comes from Jewish culture should be applied today more than ever before. Never again should these kind of crimes be allowed, and definitely never again in the name of Islam and Arab and Palestinian identity. We should distance ourselves from those kind of actions by delegitimizing them completely, because they do not represent what we believe in. They should be seen as savage, ugly crimes that do not enjoy any accommodation from Arab, Islamic, or Palestinian identity. That we cannot give cover to those kind of actions, not in any way, population.
I want to ask more specifically about how you see us getting to the future you envisage, because right now we're in the middle of a particularly horrible war after a particularly brutal kickoff point. And the majority, you know, Israel celebrated the return of some hostages after up to 50 days imprisonment by Hamas in Gaza, but the majority of the hostages are still in Gaza. There are now suggestions, even from the US, explicitly, that we may never see the rest of the women because Hamas may well be keeping them because of the daily atrocities it could be carrying out on those women. And you've just spoken passionately and wholeheartedly against that kind of sexual-based violence. So how do we get there when there is this division, whether you feel it's caused by hardline Israeli positions or whether you feel it's caused by entrenched corruption and lack of democracy within Palestinian society? You have, on the one hand, Abu Mazen, Mahmoud Abbas, in I don't remember what year of his 4-year term as president. You have in Gaza, Hamas having won one election and then a bloody coup. How well is the Palestinian side preparing itself for statehood and proving that it can take on that responsibility to the wider world?
First, Jonathan, let me distinguish between the events of October 7th and the savage treatment of women October 7th versus the treatment of the women hostages that have been released, that all of them report relatively decent treatment. And they were not violated. None of them were violated on sexual basis. The ones that were treated, none of them came with this.
None of that's been revealed yet, but I have heard some fairly disturbing rumors, and I will acknowledge they're rumors, but I suspect there's a lot more to be.
As long as they're rumors, we cannot relate to them. At this stage, let's treat facts. The facts of October 7th we can relate to, and the current facts that none of them were violated, I hope they will withstand the real test of factual examination. And I hope that the remaining women are also not being violated, and that there's no rolling crime against women continuing. Just to, let's not assume that every woman that was kidnapped was violated. That's an assumption that I'm not willing to just move on by saying, because if I move on, it's as if I give it credibility. I can't give credibility for a rumor that we do not know how factual it is. About the day after, this is a topic that I'm very busy with. I've discussed it with President Biden. I've discussed it with just a couple of weeks ago with the Foreign Minister of Germany. I discussed it last week also with Israel's President Herzog in a meeting with him. I'm discussing it with the Arab political leaders in Israel and with many of the Jewish political leaders in Israel. And what I believe in is that we need to move into the direction of a two-state solution where a future Palestinian state will live in peace and security with Israel, that it will never constitute a security concern for Israel, and that Israel will not create a security concern for the Palestinians. The second component, other than security, we need dignity. We need to protect each other's dignity. No violations, whether it is sexual violations or harassment of a Palestinian woman at the checkpoint where she cannot get to a hospital to have her baby. We need to prevent those kind of actions. And I'm not comparing. We just need to have the principle of at least decency and justice in the relationship between Israelis and Palestinians. So although we're looking maybe now for separation, but it's more like a divorce that is a must divorce, but it's a divorce that needs to split the house, maintaining many doors in that house, and doors of cooperation that will allow continued interdependency and cooperation between a future Palestinian state and Israel. One, for sure, we need it is security. Second is economy. Third is environment. Fourth and sixth and seventh, we probably have 70 or 80 doors that need to be maintained there. So it's not just to talk about complete separation. We need to talk about also what will maintain the peaceful arrangement with avoiding the Palestinian issue. Delaying it for another generation or two will result with what resulted in the last generation. Couple of intifadas, couple of Gaza eruptions. One of them was massive eruption like October 2000. Delaying for one more generation, it's inviting the next intifada or the next eruption as what happened in October 7th. So that's why we need to diffuse the conflict. Immediately, we need to de-escalate as much as we can. We need to build capacity within the Palestinian community, and that capacity means to build the political leadership capable to bring the Palestinian people to the negotiations table as unified Palestinians, not to come with two-headed community. I think that the end of this Palestinian separation is crucial for the Palestinians to be able to engage in peace talks with Israel. On the Israeli side, we need to have a willing political leadership. And right now, we're in a much worse situation than in the past, because the readiness or willingness of the Israeli public who elects their leadership is not there yet. And I think that the engagement of the international community in providing the sense of safety and security to the Israelis is critical and essential today, so that they might be able to dare to engage into the day after strategy of a two-state peaceful solution.
I mean, I hear all that, but I don't think it answers, if I may say, the question, which is how do we get there? I mean, to not have a divided, disunified Palestinian leadership, but I mean, how on earth can that be achieved now? And at the end of all this, which house, after this divorce, whose house do you want to live in, mum's or dad's? Where will you personally choose to be, Palestine or Israel?
Well, I'm going to choose to live in Ixal, where I have lived I'm 27th generation there, and my granddaughter is 29th generation. Realistically speaking, I understand Palestine is not coming there. Palestine is going to end more or less around the Green Line. I'm about 30 miles inland. So I realize I'm going to stay inside Israel as Israeli citizen, as Palestinian citizen of the state of Israel, loyal to my Palestinian identity and loyal to my state. And that's my only option. The alternative option is to become a refugee in a future Palestinian state, or maybe in England. And I'm not looking at those options. I'm looking at maintaining the well-being of my 29th generation, my granddaughter, and helping her build that 30th generation afterwards. About how do we get there? The bad news is that I don't think we can do it with our local capacities in Israel or the Palestinian Authority. I don't think the Palestinian Authority has the capacity to produce a joint unified leadership without Arab world intervention. And I mean intervention could be coercion to some of the factions to force them into a unified leadership and to try to prevent a radical engagement such as Iran's engagement in the Palestinian arena. And I also see some kind of imposition on Israel to come from the United States or from Europe about the day after, about the need for a diplomatic solution. Right now, if you leave it to the Israelis, they're not willing to go there. We need outside forces to intervene. And sometimes, maybe that's what we need because we are incapable. Leave it to us. Israelis and Palestinians will continue fighting for the next 75 years.
I hear that, but again, I'm not sure from where I'm sitting here in the UK how realistic it is to say that to two peoples. We're taking over, you can't settle this yourself. For example, you mentioned Itamar Ben-Gvir and you mentioned Hamas. Roughly speaking, what is the percentage support of Hamas among Palestinians in both Gaza and the West Bank? And roughly speaking, what is the percentage support for Itamar Ben-Gvir within Israel? And how do you square those two things? Because as I read the polls, there's massive support for October the 7th, for Hamas. This has bolstered Hamas's popularity, even in the West Bank. You're a politician at the end of the day. How on earth are you going to square that? You're saying it's from external Arab forces, but isn't that what Bibi Netanyahu was pursuing in the Abraham Accords, which you just said wasn't the right way to deal with it? He was pursuing an agenda of getting Arab support for peace and cooperation with Israel, which would then in turn force Palestinians into agreeing against Hamas and extremist positions. But you've just spoken against that.
Jonathan, let's go back to, Moataz is here with us, but let's go back to an Egyptian experiment with Israel. The day before Sadat came to Israel, the majority of Israelis were against returning Sinai. The day after he spoke at the Knesset, the majority of Israelis were in support of returning the Sinai. Pay the price of peace. Peace has a price, and you're willing to pay it only when you see it's on the table. As long as the Palestinian options for a diplomatic solution are zero, as long as the political horizon that Mahmoud Abbas is offering the Palestinians is zero, clearly Hamas takes over. You need to be able to offer something realistic on the table to say, here is a political horizon, and now I'm putting that in front of the Palestinians. But to expect that the Palestinian Authority offers zero horizon and Hamas forced actually re-engagement or rediscussion, forced Biden to say two-state solution. Biden didn't say that in the last 14, 15 years as a politician or anything, or in the last 3 years as president. He said that only as a result of Hamas's engagement. So that clearly boosts Hamas status, that here they are bringing us closer to a political resolution and to maybe statehood. So that's sort of rewarding the violent actions of Hamas with a political horizon. That political horizon needs to be given to more moderate Palestinians, engage them, show with whom Israel is willing to make peace. But if Israel says no peace with the Palestinian Authority, no peace with Hamas, what do you expect? Only the more militant Palestinians will win the support. But one more thing, in polls, we know that the tilting during crisis, the results tilt during crisis. There was an amazing poll that was conducted by Khalil Shkaki from Ramallah about the elections of the Palestinian elections in 2006. Hamas won the majority. The day after he did a test, he did another poll, and the majority of the Palestinians said, if we knew what the results would have been, we would not have voted for Hamas. I mean, it was a no for the Palestinian Authority, but not a yes for Hamas.
Thank you so much to Mohammad for that interview, and thank you for listening. Let's hope that as we keep going with this podcast series, more talk brings more peace.
We hope more peace. We hope more peace to live together, Jewish and Arab.